Sign up for free Stratfor Intelligence. Simply enter your email address to receive 2 free reports each week.
The French government has said on March 10th that it will recognize the Libyan National Transition Council as the sole representative of the Libyan people and will soon move its ambassador to Benghazi from Tripoli. This comes as the French President Nicolas Sarkozy has said that he will call for airstrikes against the Libyan forces at the March 11th EU Council meeting. France has been one of the most vociferous supporters of a no-fly zone in Libya. However, the issue for the French involvement is what is really the capacity of Paris to enforce such a zone on its own. The French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle is the only aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean at the moment. However, its complement of around 35 aircraft would not be sufficient to set up the initial zone. Therefore, the question is, to what extent can France really enforce the zone on its own? The logic of the call for an intervention is therefore largely a domestic one for Paris. Initially, France took a lot of criticism for how it responded to the wave of protest in Tunisia and Egypt. Its foreign minister, Michel Alliot-Marie, took a lot of criticism for not only vacationing in Tunisia by flying on a private jet of a businessman close to the regime, but also offering the regime help of French security forces in repressing against protesters only 3 days before the Tunisian president ultimately fled the country. French President Sarkozy ultimately had to replace Alliot-Marie with veteran Alain Juppé. The replacement in the French Foreign Ministry was a considerable embarrassment for Sarkozy and for the French government. Therefore, one of the logics for the support of a no-fly zone is a compensation for the earlier lack of clarity on French policy towards the change in the Middle East. Another reason for the support of the no-fly zone is, of course, French role in European Union affairs. With Germany's rising clout in economic and political policy of the Eurozone and wider European Union, Paris wants to maintain its leadership on foreign affairs and any military initiatives by the Europeans. And therefore, leadership on this issue is very important for Paris. Furthermore, what aids Paris in its diplomatic push for a no-fly zone is an actual lack of interests in Libya. It is not to say that France doesn't have any interests. It does import 10% of its oil from Libya. However, it is nowhere near the level of interest that its Mediterranean neighbor Italy has, which imports about 25% of its oil from the North African state. Therefore, France has less of a need to hedge its policy towards the Gaddafi regime. It can be far more forceful in supporting an intervention because it's not as worried about its energy assets and investments in Libya as Italy is. Ultimately, Paris understands that nobody is going to ask France to enforce a no-fly zone on its own, and it is comforted by the fact that Germany and Italy are very carefully considering their steps, and it knows that it can essentially support a very aggressive interventionist approach without being called to do it on its own. This gives France considerable liberty in how it treats the Libyan situation, and it also allows Sarkozy to gain political points at home.